Hi, I'm Jim Riley. Welcome to Hometown Spotlight. Today I have two very special guests. Richard Anderson, look at the nod. And it kept the cap on. We said you'd keep the cap on. And Songayllo,
Very good.
two L's. Okay, the committee is?
The Lincoln Funeral Train Commemoration Committee
Commemoration Committee.
of Stuyvesant and Hudson.
Stuyvesant and Hudson. So you have a series of events that are going to take place. Richard, why don't you start and give us some background on the overall project?
Okay. Our core group is from the Stuyvesant Depot Restoration Committee. And in the last few years, we've been working on a couple of historical projects. What started us out on this was to do some issue for the Civil War, some program for Civil War. And Stuyvesant has a local hero named Patrick Sweeney who saved the day from a tremendous train wreck, although he was threatened the whole time for doing it. So we began with this program, and we did it in April of 2014, and we decided we would then, in April of 2015, look at the funeral train. The funeral train is historic in Stuyvesant and Hudson. It's our history. We saw the opportunity to commemorate an event that moved the nation. We wanted to recreate as best we can a tragic moment in time that left Americans with a deep sense of loss, uncertainty, and fear. So we are going to do a vigil on the 25th of April on the Stuyvesant Landing.
Right.
And we are going to have reenactors. We have the 9th Massachusetts Light Artillery, and they'll do gun salutes, cannon firing, and have a singing group. We'll also have Mrs. Lincoln. Mrs. Lincoln did not travel on the train. She actually stayed in Washington.
Right, okay.
But we feel that she has a perspective on the funeral and on what happens.
So
that
she should be a part of this.
many times was at opposition to what the government wanted to do.
Right.
So she has a story to tell. Solomon Northrop will be another one of the reenactors from 12 Years a Slave. Mm-hmm. We have a Civil War surgeon who is going to talk about, so what happens after the war? How do these people who have been disabled, who have lost limbs, how do they return to the community, and what kind of services?
And we're dealing with those issues even today.
Even today.
So
the
it's
same
terribly
issues
important
from
to
war.
recognize that. Yes.
Yes. We also have a Civil War reenactor named Leo Sinikowski from Greene County, and he's going to share his Civil War collection with us and speak on the Lincoln funeral train. We have quite a group from Greene County, has been a big supporter of our program also.
Good.
And we will have, they're going to present a reading of the diary of a woman named Elizabeth Miller. Elizabeth Miller was a farm wife in Coxsackie, and during the entire Civil War she kept a diary. And one of the most moving pieces is the piece that she wrote about the day they went to Albany to see the president lying in state.
Right.
There'll be a eulogy, a 19th century eulogy performed on the landing. We also have some other programs. In 2014, our historian in Stuyvesant, Juanita Knott, going through some old boxes, discovered three issues of a newspaper, a hand-printed newspaper called The Old Flag. and it was written in Camp Tyler, Texas. After the war, the gentleman who wrote it saved 3 of the copies and brought them home with him. And somehow in the ensuing years, they ended up in Stuyvesant. And as she was going through
Very
a box
fortunate
of
for
old
us.
materials,
She found it.
she found these 3 handwritten newspapers. And they're very interesting because they depict war in the camp.
Right.
But they're humorous, they're serious, they're jokes, they're
It was
calendar.
the experience they were going through at the time.
What they were
That's
going
important.
through at the time and how they were passing the time.
Great.
Yeah.
And we're going to get you in here. We got to put you to work. You're not going to just have Richard do all the work. So we're going to go to you. Tell us a little bit about the committee, how you came together. Now you said it's both Stuyvesant and Hudson. So tell us a little bit about how you put the committee together and how you come up with this idea of this project.
Well, the idea for the project, I think, really was Richard's, and he brought it to the committee, the the Stuyvesant Depot
Right.
Restoration Committee, which is a group of 10, 12 people maybe, which fluctuates, and have been focused for quite a number of years on restoring the depot and getting funding for it.
Right. And that's part of the process. You have to get funding to support it. But anytime you can restore these things, it just adds so much to the community, I think.
Yeah, well, this
Yeah.
is a charming little building. If you haven't seen it,
Oh,
you
we
should
will.
take a
after the
trip
show.
down to the
That's a
down
gift.
to the
I get to
landing
learn about
and-
it, so I'll be over to visit Richard and we'll take a look.
Excellent.
But you're right, it's terribly important to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah?
and so I had the good fortune, I suppose, of being in the right spot at the right time. And Richard said, "Would you help me with this?" And so there we are. And by this he meant the commemoration of the Lincoln
Right.
funeral train and turning it into an event that would be valuable to the whole community.
Well, I just think it's so important to remember these experiences because they're central to our history as a nation. Now, I'm going to look at a few things. You don't mind if I just look through this? And
Sure.
Not at all. That's what it's there
you
for.
straighten me. Lincoln and the Hudson Valley is the name of this. You put this piece together, the committee put this
We did.
piece together, and these are available out in the community?
Yes.
They
Where
are.
would they pick up something like this, Ann?
Well, the libraries have them, the schools have them to be sent home, I think possibly with the older children.
Oh, good, okay. So the older children in school, maybe junior high, high school, will have access to these and can bring them
Yeah.
home?
And then we have people that have been putting them all, I think, all up and down Warren Street, and the County Tourism Office has them, Chamber of
Oh,
Commerce
that's a
has
good
them.
idea as well.
A lot of places, and then
Chamber
the
of Commerce.
Chamber.
Chamber of Commerce has them as well?
Yes.
Terribly important. So if you give me a second, I'm going to go through this, and then maybe you can round it out for me a little bit, okay?
Sure.
So the piece, again, is called Lincoln in the Hudson Valley. The nation mourns of fathers slain is the badge there. Okay, so it says, in 2015, communities of Columbia County are marking a historic event between February and the end of April. And on April 25th, both Hudson and Stuyvesant, and that's how the committee is working together, will hold commemorative visuals with bonfires, gun salutes, draped buildings, period church remembrances, tableaus, musical presentations, reenactments, and the like. Now, here are some of the things that are taking place that people will want to know about. You're going to do well, you've already done this. This is February 9th, the press conference you had with Congressman Gibson. He was going to be here today, but unfortunately the plans changed, and we'll have to lasso him and bring him back and have him kind of catch us up to date on this. And then the other one was Remembering Lincoln. He did this as well. This was up at Ichabod Crane.
Ichabod
Yes.
Crane. we
Right,
had-
Remembering Lincoln with Chris Gibson. Lincoln is a complex historical figure, and he certainly was that. Worthy of our close study. Now, March 5th, we have Lincoln's final journey to Albany. Jack McEnany, the author of Albany's Capital City on the Hudson, and that's going to be at the Stuyvesant Town Hall in Stuyvesant. Tell us a little bit about that, Ann.
Well, other than the fact that Mr. McEnany has a recently completed book on Albany, capital city of the Hudson, I don't know very much about the talk.
Okay, so we'll get that.
And we will get that.
When the talk takes place.
It is going to be about the funeral train and its relationship to Hudson, to Albany.
Right, to Albany, okay. On March 15th, underwear in the 1860 women's clothing in the mid-19th century. Kirsten Gustafson, am I pronouncing that correct?
Yes.
I believe so,
Correctly?
yeah.
Education Director, Claremont State Historic Site. Richard, why should we be interested in that? It sounds interesting enough, but what is your take on that?
Dress in the 19th century was a big issue, especially for women. And this program has been very popular when it's given with women. We saw it at the Friends of Lindenwald, and it was an excellent program. We liked it a lot. Mostly it's about, it's all about posture. They corseted themselves so that they could sit upright and always be in that position. You didn't dare not.
And it was required. I mean, it reflects culture. I think that's my sense.
Yeah.
I have a background in sociology, so but it does. It reflects the culture at that time.
Yes.
And I think that's a real significant issue as well.
And you notice a person who is corseted, they stand better. They stand upright and straight.
And I think they tend to be more dignified. Professionals, not the term, but just everything is a bit more. It's almost staged or show that you have to perform a certain act at that stage in history. It's very interesting. Okay, next, Mine Eyes Have Seen the Glory, A Nation Mourns. That's a Lincoln musical tribute. That sounds really interesting. And that's Richard, the Regimental Balladeers. Tell us a little bit about that.
The Regimental Balladeers are a group of professional musicians from Windham. And in the last 5 years, as they celebrated the Civil War, the group has presented musical programs all over the country. The man who heads it up is named John Quinn, and he was the director or the superintendent of all of the Civil War events in the Catskills. And he leads this group, and we saw them online, and then later heard and read many reviews how much people liked the program.
They have to be here.
It seemed like a natural.
It's clear they have to be a participant.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I came across a quote the other day, believe it or not, and I believe it was Friedrich Nietzsche who said that without music, life would be a mistake. And I think when you look, again, at that time period and how people celebrated and how they came together as a community, music is a big part of that.
Music was a big thing. The piano had just become very, very popular, and music was an everyday thing in people's homes.
Right, became very important. Okay, next, and we have Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and the meaning of the Civil War. Ted Hilscher, an old friend of ours, again from Greene County, also a professor over at Columbia Green. He's going to do that piece.
Yeah, that should be really quite interesting, I think. We haven't really addressed the Gettysburg Address in much of anything else that we're doing here. So he came up with this idea and offered to do it, and we hope that everybody will come and enjoy it. We do note that Columbia Green has requested that we register for that. They want to have a brief head count or a small head count before the event.
I happen to be a retiree from the college, and one of the things that the college has always been very good at, and particularly under the direction of Jim Campion, who's the president, my former boss when I worked there, is that when something's real, when something's genuine, they want the public to know that the college is a participant. It's very important to them to have that recognition. And I think he's right, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
absolutely.
that significant event.
Absolutely.
This is a major event for our community, terribly important. Okay, and then the final, Lincoln's Long Journey Home. And Richard, if you, again, do a little bit more on that for us, because you were telling me before we were on the air about the tour of the Lincoln train. So just, if you could do a little more on that.
Lincoln's Long Journey Home is an exhibit at the DAR here in Hudson. And the prize piece of the exhibit will be the copy of the Emancipation Proclamation that New
Right.
York State owns.
So New York State actually owns that copy.
New York State owns the second copy, and actually it's the only copy left. The original copy was burned in the Chicago fire in 1870.
So it is the remaining copy.
It's the remaining copy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, before we went on the air, and now, again, I want to poke Richard a little more. He's got to do a little work. We got him here to do some work. Tell us the tour of the train. It started in Washington, and what was that journey? What was that trip across the nation?
Okay, the trip began in Washington, D.C., and then went through state capitals. Went from Washington to Baltimore, Baltimore to Harrisburg,
Right.
Harrisburg to Trenton, and from Trenton to New York City, and then from New York City up the Hudson Valley, and he lay in state in New York City. Wasn't the capital, but he lay in state in New York, and he also lay in state in Albany. Buffalo was also a stop on the train, again, one that wasn't a state capital.
Right.
From there, it went to Columbus, Ohio,
Right.
and from Columbus back to Michigan, from Columbus, it went to Indianapolis.
Okay.
And then from Indianapolis, went up to Michigan City, Indiana, where then it was taken to Chicago,
Right.
and he lay in state in Chicago also. From Chicago, then the next stop was Springfield.
Springfield. You know, Ann, as we talk about this, it's really remarkable that we were a big part of this history. I think people in general terms know about that funeral train, but to know that it actually came through this community, and it was lying in state in Albany. I mean, this is when history becomes real. It's got to be terribly exciting for you and your committee to work on this project, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I think, personally, I have learned a lot just doing this. And I think that I certainly, other people will tell you about what's going to happen in Hudson, but it's going to be somewhat similar to what happened the actual night of in Hudson then.
Right.
And some of the exhibits that we will have and activities and events as the train travels north will be what the general population just did. They didn't have any plans. There was nothing
Right.
choreographed. They just came
Right.
out because of their feeling for their president, their fallen president, and had bonfires and singing. I mean, there was music there.
Right.
Everything impromptu.
Well, it's just fascinating to me as I look at this. It's remarkable that a nation can go through the Civil War itself. I mean, what a tragic event and a watershed event for the nation. But Lincoln himself, as a character, again, a more complex character, I don't think you'll see in our nation's history than Abraham Lincoln, and what he meant to the people. And the other thing that you mentioned earlier, and I think it's kind of, you have to think about the context at the time, but the fear in the nation as well with an event such as that. We have had assassinations, and unfortunately it's part of our history, but
Yes,
that
and
must
we
have been very
remember, for example, Kennedy. When Kennedy died, everybody remembers what they were doing.
Right.
Well, it was similar and perhaps even more
intense at
more
that time.
intense
Yeah.
because a war was just ending. People were expecting a whole different resolution here.
Right.
And all of a sudden the president is assassinated.
Yeah.
So there really was a sense of loss, uncertainty, and great fear of what was coming.
Yeah.
And the issues were so big. The
Very,
issue,
very big issues.
really, it's.
And of course it did change the way reconstruction was
Had a
done
great
after
impact
the
on
war.
that
It
as
had a
well.
grave impact on what happened in the next 30 years.
Yeah. And I didn't want to cut
Well,
you
I was
off.
going to say many of the libraries have books out on display that we certainly.
So they're working
think
it
that-
right into their activities at the
Some of them
libraries
are,
as well.
if not anything more than having books available visibly,
Right.
easily available for people. So it's definitely worth picking up one or two and
Yes.
or rewatching the Lincoln film.
We received some gifts today. But
Good.
We're gonna enjoy having this. Bookmarks. It's really,
That's an original bookmark. It was a bookmark to start with also. We don't know who did it, but
I'm gonna read this. There's a
Sure.
quote here. It's
oh
just
yes,
Yeah,
it's
oh, yeah.
good.
by Abraham Lincoln that's truly remarkable. Okay. I have said nothing but what I am willing to live by, and if it be the pleasure of Almighty God to die by, excuse me. Let me read it again. I have said nothing but what I am willing to live by, and if it be the pleasure of Almighty God to die by. Lincoln. Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so it's the Lincoln in the Hudson Valley. The activities, again, we're going to go through them quickly. March 5th, Lincoln's final journey to Albany, which will take place at Stuyvesant Town Hall. March 15th, underwear. And then the 1860s women's clothing, mid-19th century. That again will be at the Stuyvesant Town Hall. Mine eyes have seen the glory, a nation mourns, a Lincoln musical tribute. And that's going to be at the First Presbyterian Church on Warren Street in Hudson. April 23rd, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and the meaning of the Civil War. Ted Hilscher, Associate Professor of History at Columbia Green, will be doing that at Columbia Green Community College. And then April 24th through 26th, Lincoln's Long Journey Home, DAR exhibit, tells the story of the assassination of President Lincoln and the trip on the funeral train. That will be at the DAR, 113 Warren Street, Hudson. Additional organization with events to be announced: Operation Unite in the Hudson, Shiloh Baptist Church, Hudson, Town of Hillsdale, Town of Claverick. Congratulations to you both. Again, I'm not going to dare do this again.
And Songayllo.
And Songayllo.
Richard Anderson.
And the name of the committee?
The Lincoln Funeral Train Commemoration Committee.
Commemoration
of
Committee.
Stuyvesant and Hudson.
Stuyvesant and Hudson. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Thank you for what you're doing for our community. We're very, very grateful.
And
Thanks so much.
thank you
Thank you.
for having us.
Great.
And for supporting the event.
Oh, we're excited. We're very excited. And we want to thank you for joining us on Hometown Spotlight. We look forward to seeing you real soon.